Hello everyone, my name is Wilmer, and the topic that I chose was on police brutality. And so my proposition is police officers should not take advantage of their power nor take advantage of American citizens. So I'm going to list out my claims. My first claim is on police brutality revolve around racism. My second claim is on police are targeting the lower class, and third, police should not abuse their power and should be held accountable for their actions. So going back to my first claim, police brutality revolved around racism. So a new study confirms that African Americans and Hispanics are twice likely to be killed by police compared to whites. This new research was inspired by Harvard University economist Roland Fryer that found police were more likely to use deadly force and were most likely to shoot at African American and Hispanics as at whites. According to the Los Angeles Times, in March of 1991, Rodney King, who was 26, was beaten by 4 police officers. But what they didn't know was that George Holliday, who happened to be there that night, recorded the whole scene. According to Mapping Police Violence, 30% of African American victims were unarmed in 2015, and compared to 21% of white victims. 69% of black victims were nonviolent and unarmed. My secondary claim, police are targeting the lower classes. Hundreds of millions of the poorest people in the developing world are abused by corrupt police who extort bribes and brutalize innocent citizens, or are held in abusive pretrial detention. This was stated by the police abuse of power, and a quote that I took out was, "Poor people regard the police as agents of oppression, not protection." Over and over again, poor people said that justice and police protection are only for rich businesses, rich people, and those with connections. And this was brought by the Voices of the Poor, the World Bank. Police officers are targeting the lower class people instead of taking proper action to address serious and violent crimes. Police targets youth who look too poor to own the expensive clothes and jewelry they're wearing. According to the reports by Natalie O'Neill, the New York Post, a story from the Dutch newspaper mentions that a police officer will undress the youth and force them to hand over the upskill gear. This was given by Woodard Police Chief Frank told the paper. This strategy is a recipe of racial profiling, which brings me to my last claim. Police should not abuse their power and should be held accountable for their actions. An article by PBS SoCal states that Baltimore police may have planted or mishandled evidence. A Baltimore police officer was suspended, and 2 of his colleagues placed on leave after body camera footage appeared to show them planting fake evidence at a crime scene. The footage was released by Maryland Public Defender's Office. Police cameras has a feature that saves 30 seconds of video before activations, but without audio. Before the police officer activated his camera, he placed a can of soup into a pile of trash before walking out of the valley alongside the house, and then activating his body camera and returning back to the alley to announce his discovery. The Baltimore Police Department suspended Pinheiro and put other officer on the call on paid leave. This was reported by NPR, and all charges were dropped against the suspect and was free. So just to recap of all my 3 claims, first claim was police brutality revolved around racism, and example was Roland Fryer, who was beaten by 4 officers. Second claim was police are targeting the lower class, and for example was the Hispanic, who targets the youth who look too poor to own expensive clothes. And my third claim was police should not abuse their power and should be held accountable for actions. For example, the police officer who gave fake evidence, and my main claim, a recap, was police officers should not take advantage of their power nor take advantage of American citizens. Thank you.
Okay, well, the proposition has two parts to it, and the second part is a claim of policy, so that's a little bit problematic. There is a preview of what the secondary claims is going to be, so that helps kind of keep things organized. And you signpost those points when you get to them, so in the body of the speech, it's relatively easy to follow. The first point is the point that you have the most relevant information on, suggesting that racism is a part of the process. All of this evidence talks about the issues in the United States based on shootings and arrests and that sort of thing. And you've got an example also that you're using on that particular point. And that's perfectly fine to illustrate the point that you're making there. I think you need some more follow-up on it, but the secondary points that you have that you use for the rest of the speech don't seem to follow up on that information. It seems like it's changed the subject. Almost everything on the second point seems to be related to international law enforcement policies, a variety of places. You mentioned, something that's happening in the Netherlands. It sounds to me like a lot of the countries where the police are subject to bribery and are seen as operating out of oppression, working for the power elite. Your evidence comes from the World Bank and a book, The Voice of the Poor, and it sounds to me like this is all about what happens overseas in the way police are perceived in other parts of the world. And that's not the same kind of stuff that we're usually dealing with here. I'm not saying that there couldn't be that perception here, but all the evidence that you have seems to be related to non-American context. So the first point is all American context. The second point is none, it's completely out of here. And then the third point talks about some police abuses that have happened. These are American contexts, and you make the argument that says that we shouldn't be allowing this to happen, and then you prove that we shouldn't be allowing it to happen. In fact, the police officers in the examples that you cite are suspended and punished, and the suspect is released and the charges against them are dropped. So it sounds to me like some justice was done in this particular circumstance. Now the question is this typical? Does this happen a lot? We got lucky with finding this one case, but it happens all the time with cases that we don't find out. We need some information to suggest that that's true, and we don't have anything except the one example. So it's awfully hard to make a generalization from that singular example, especially when the singular example suggests that we're doing exactly the thing that you say we ought to be doing. So you need to make that argument work a little bit better for you. Lots of reading here. We got a lot of people who are doing a lot of reading, and hopefully we'll break that habit a little bit more. All right, thank you.